Hello and welcome to Animated Anarchy. This is a Minicast episode featuring Andrew and Mike.
What inspired you to become an animator?
Okay, well, this was the question that was given to us. Would you and Michael ever consider doing an episode about why you got into animation, how you discovered your passion, what you did to prepare you for the industry, and your first jobs leading up to where you are today? And it's like, I think we can discuss that in a very
You're gonna have to make sure
brief...
to bring.
Here, well, I'd actually like to start this off because
you started.
I mean, I've been getting this question a lot about. How I got into animation, what really drove me to it. Because, like, when I was a kid, really the only things that you could be was a fireman,
policeman,
a policeman, or the president.
Yeah.
No, a fireman, an astronaut, and the president. Those were the three options. And for me, it was just like, okay, I don't really want to decide between these three, but I'll just write it off anyway. And I've been drawing since I was 5.
Yeah.
It's like I got in trouble in school for drawing because, like, I would just do it all over my homework. I would draw in class. Like, the teacher would just come up and take my papers and pencils away from me because I would be drawing while she's doing lectures. And, I was just, like, very confined to myself, just, like, drawing and, just doodling with stuff, like, during a recess and stuff like that. And that was really, it was just my passion. I liked to do it. I drew in like, books.
Yeah.
It's like, there are books at my mom's place where I just have drawings inside them. And she doesn't want to get rid of them because it's like, it's drawings that I have in these books, and, like, you can't really get rid of them anyway and it's funny because, like, my nephew actually had a couple Garfields where I drew in them, and he always things like that's the most entertaining part of it.
Yeah.
That's not to say anything bad against Garfield, but
a lot of other people have done it before.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Okay.
And when I was I think I was around 10 years old. This is when Aladdin came out. When did Aladdin come out?
92.
That was 92. Yeah, I was 10. I was 10.
I mean, I was 3 or 4.
Yeah, you're much younger than me. So, but I remember we watched the movie at a special event. My dad worked at the Disneyland Hotel. He was the head of catering over there, and every time they had, like, a special event or a banquet or something, he was in charge of that. And sometimes we were able to invite the family to come in and watch special events. I actually got to see Who Framed Roger Rabbit inside the hotel at a special screening, and that was the first time I saw that movie. I was like, oh my god, I love this movie.
Yeah.
It's so great. And I was even younger then too. I was like, I probably wasn't even allowed to watch that movie because it's like, what, rated PG-13 or something like that.
There was some adult jokes in it.
Yeah. But we saw Aladdin in the Presidential Theater in Disneyland. That's where they used to have some screenings.
Really? Where they show Mr. Lincoln?
Yes, they had some screenings there. I saw Aladdin, and I think I saw Beauty and the Beast in there as well. But when we saw Aladdin, it was like, that was one of my favorite movies growing up. I loved the genie. I loved every sort aspect of it. It was just really fun, very adventurous, very funny. And the romance elements were in there too. I was like, I'm a little boy. I only like the action in there, but I still like the romance in it. Jasmine's hot. I'll just say that. It's like a 10-year-old boy. Like, I love Jasmine. And then there was a moment where Eric Goldberg came into the hotel for a special event of some sort. I don't remember exactly what it was for, but he was there doing a lecture, and he came in, and my dad says, like, would you like to see this guy talk about your favorite movie? And I was like, sure. I would love to hear more about Aladdin. And he was there basically talking about what he does in animation, and he showed some roughs, like the rough sketch animation of the genie, when it was like Robin Williams stand-up comedy, and like it was basically stuff like he would usually get in trouble for if he would show off the side, but it was really great. And that's when it like clicked to me. It's like, there's a job in this. This guy actually animates it. It's so funny because like in that entire time I was a kid, it only just dawned on me when I saw this man on stage talking to us about what he did. It's that where it clicked to me. I was like, that's a job. That is something that I can finally do on my own.
Isn't that moment magical, though?
It's great. I mean, it's like, it's something that, you know, I guess it's that moment because people don't really realize that there are certain things that take to do something. You know, it's like you don't really realize that there are people who run the cement mixer. You know, you don't really realize there are people who clean up the sewers. For me, it's like I never really realized there are people who actually draw for a living.
Yeah,
and
it was a job.
Animate these movies. And that's where it's like, it dawned on me, it's like, I gotta do this. This is what I do. I love drawing. I gotta keep going for animation. So it was like, I just kept on going to different classes, like after school events where they had animation classes.
Yeah.
But it was just like, you know, it was a fun little experiment thing. I actually went to an after school program called GATE, and I think it was like Garden Grove Arts Teaching Education. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it was like it was after school program. And that's when I first learned how to animate on an Amiga.
Oh my God.
With that, you know, that Disney animation program that came with it. I was like using a mouse to animate, and it was like really wiggly animation, very badly done. It looks like something out of Canada, like the O Canada shorts, where it's like the lines are always completely
the big
wiggly.
snit looking.
Yeah. And that was the first time I actually animated something. And from then on, it was like I got my own computer. I tried to get animation program. There was one for a Mac. I can't remember what it was, but it was really weird. It was like you would take pieces and almost like Rayman animate it. You know, where it's like, you know, just taking like arms and feet and just kind of moving it. Very early Flash, but didn't really fly through because no one really knew about it. And then once I got into OSHA, which is the Orange County High School of the Arts, that was like another after-school program in high school where it's like, you know, after you do your regular classes, then you have 2 other classes after school where it's focused on art. And that's really where I just learned different stuff. In my senior class, I learned Flash for the first time because we had like a Flash class, which wasn't necessarily like to learn animation, but it soon turned into that because like the teacher realized like, you know, you can use this to animate. And I'm like, really? Animation is what I do. So that's when I learned Flash, and I started doing like little things every now and then. Like, you know, I did like, did a couple shorts. I like to do music videos and stuff like that. And then I went into Art Institute, which was at first, you know, it was like an animation school. And I don't really know. I can't really say much about Art Institute because it's like halfway through, it kind of turned into like a half culinary arts. And then it started to focus into video game arts, and it's like that wasn't really something I wanted to do. I did learn a lot of stuff about animation, like drafting, figure drawing, and color theory and stuff like that, which is all really necessary stuff. But the school itself was just like kind of, I don't know.
And now it's really
in the crapper. I mean,
a diploma mill.
Yeah, it's. I would not recommend Art Institute at all. But after that, I graduated in 2003 or 2004. I think I graduated in 2004, and a year after, like that entire year after that, I was just looking for work. Art Institute had this program where it's like they would try to give you jobs and stuff like that, but they really didn't try. I tried to look for jobs around. I talked to some folks who were still looking for work, but at the same time, it's like they were in my position. You know, it's like we're doing the same thing. We're trying to look for a job in this industry, and I had my portfolio and everything, and I didn't really necessarily know what I wanted to do because there wasn't anything that was like, okay, do you want to focus on storyboard drawing, or do you want to focus on character drawing, or do you want to focus on like backgrounds, layout, whatever? There wasn't really anything like that. I just had like a little bit of everything. And then I think it was Okay, it was April 1st, 2015, and I went to Warner Brothers, which was still in Sherman Oaks.
2015?
2015,
This year
no,
is
2005. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Wait, when did I say I graduated? 2004.
Four.
Yes. Okay, 2004. Okay, 2005. I'm so sorry. Yes, I just now got the job at Warner Brothers. No. Okay, 2005, April 1st. I remember this date specifically because I thought it was a joke. I went to Warner Brothers, which was still in Sherman Oaks, and I went there to pick up my portfolio because, after a while, it's like, okay, thank you so much. Pick up your portfolio and you'll be on your merry way. The front desk lady, who was, I think her name was Thelma, I believe. Oh gosh, I can't remember her name. She was very well known because she was the front desk lady, and she asked me to stop for a minute, and says like, "Are you just looking for work? I know someone upstairs who needs the, they needs a position to be filled." And I was like, "Okay, I'll go for it." Ask the guy to come down, and he came down. I don't know if I should really say names here, but he was one of the producers on the show, and looked at my portfolio. He really liked my work. He brought me upstairs to the other artists up there who were like, the art directors and stuff like that, and said, "Would you be considered doing character design work?" And I said, like, yes, I would love it. And right there, I was waiting to be punked because it was April 1st,
Yeah.
So, but honestly, it's like that was one of the greatest days of my life. It was like, oh my God, I finally got in.
Yeah.
This was my ticket in. And from then on, it's like, I was doing character design, which is like, doing turnarounds and stuff like that. My first job was Lunatics Unleashed.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because, like, the show, it wasn't really all that great, and it got really bad reception before that, which I knew as well, and like I was also kind of like sketchy about it because I was like, oh God, what are they doing? But I was so damn happy to get this job. I was willing to do anything, and it was so much fun. I cannot say this enough, that being with that crew, I learned about so many people and so many things about that job that, I learned about positions that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And here I am.
You learn more on the job than you do
Yeah,
leading up to it.
here I am. I'm just this college graduate, and I really don't know how I graduated from this school.
Yeah.
I just like, it's one of those things where you're in and you're out, and my artwork impressed these guys enough that I got a job, and I'm doing turnarounds for these characters, and they loved my work, and I was like really happy about it.
Yeah.
And I met so many great people, and at the same time, I was also learning to do storyboard revision, because that was another thing that I was like asked to do to try to help out with the production. And it was there where I realized I love doing this.
Yeah.
I learned storyboard drawing. Even in my storyboarding class, I didn't really feel like I learned anything from it.
Yeah.
But being there, doing it there, I learned more about that position than anything, and that's basically what I've been doing for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And, and you also learn things like you have to hop from production to production and stuff like that.
It's very nomadic.
It very is. But you meet a lot of people, and you build relationships with folks, and there are people that really like your work and everything, and it's really great. I can't say much else than that.
Yeah.
It's been a real ride, and I'm glad that I was able to get in when I did. So, tell me about your experience. What got you into animation?
All right. So I'm going to try to condense this as much as I can.
Oh, no, please.
Well, like, it's weird because, most artists are people who usually stay inside and didn't have a lot of... My best friend was the VCR. I had all the Disney movies on tape and the cartoons on tape. My mom actually taped a bunch of them. She would tape, like, the New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh and DuckTales on tape. And I used to watch them on tape until I wore them out. And I was probably one of the last... My generation was probably one of the last generations to see Walt Disney on television. Because on the Disney Channel, they would show the
true.
Walt Disney Show
That's true.
on
Yeah.
Saturday nights. And I remember when my grandmother was still alive, she would come visit. She would come up from Florida, come up to visit, and every night or every couple nights, we would sit up in my mom's room, which was the guest. Her place, her cot was up there, and we would watch the Wonderful World of Disney, or not the Wonderful. It was on the Disney Channel equivalent where it showed the old stuff.
Yeah.
And there would be nights.
I saw those too.
Yeah, and there would be nights where they would show Walt Disney. Walt Disney would talk about animation. It would talk about the plausible impossible and stuff like that. And you can find them now, like all on YouTube now.
Right.
But at the time, it was really. And then I remember thinking, like, even then, like, they're drawing Mickey. I'm like, oh, they're drawing pictures of Mickey Mouse. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's neat. I didn't understand what they were doing, but they were drawing pictures of Mickey Mouse and showing clips and showing cartoons, which I was totally all for, was just watching the cartoons. And there would be times where they would show like some behind the scenes animation stuff or cartoon movies or whatever. And then they would have things where it's like, oh, they're showing like Zorro or like Hardy Boys.
Oh yeah, I always tuned out,
and I would be like,
after
and then,
like Davy Crockett or something
right,
like that,
or like El Fago Baca or Swamp Fox or something like that. One of those.
Scarecrow.
Yeah, exactly. So like then, if that ever happened, my grandmother would be like, whatever. Let's just go in the closet and take out a movie and watch it. And I had all the classics on video. Yeah. And one night it was a lot like that, and it was one of those nights where it was like, oh, I don't know, the computer wore tennis shoes. Fuck this noise. My grandmother would never say that. But she would be like, this is stupid. Let's go in the closet. And I looked in the closet. I'm like, well, we've seen Bambi already. We've seen Pinocchio. We've seen Dumbo, Alice in Wonderland, all those movies. Then I see one that's still in the plastic. And I'm like, ooh, it has Mickey Mouse on it. And it was Fantasia, it was still in the plastic. And my grandmother, and I'm like, what's this? And my grandma's like, oh, I haven't seen that movie in years. Let's watch it. So I'm like, oh, it's a Mickey Mouse movie. Look at him. It's Mickey. So I watch it, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? What's with the mushrooms? What's with the fish and the weird colors and this boring bald dude talking? Like, what is going on? Then Mickey comes up, and I'm mesmerized by it. Like, my eyes were locked to it the whole time. The Sorcerer's Apprentice. And my grandmother made a comment saying, look at all the hard work they put into that. I said, what do you mean hard work? Who's they? She's like, well, they. We've been haven't you noticed in the last like 5 or 6 weeks that
you dumb kid,
you dumb stupid idiot, spawn of my child. Yeah. There are people who draw those Mickeys, and I'm like, someone had to draw those Mickeys. Yeah, and the brooms too. Really? Yeah, and they had to paint them on all. You didn't notice that? I said, I thought they were just drawing pictures of Mickey for fun. I'm like, no, that's their job. Yep. And I'm like, that's a job?
It's that realization.
Someone has to draw the Mickeys, and a lot of them, and the brooms too, and the water, and the fire, and that's a job. I want to do that because drawing was like the thing that like. It was the only thing that would relieve stress. Like if I was frustrated or upset or angry, I would sit in the corner and draw. And I would even, like when we went to a diner, I'd have crayons or whatever, and I'd draw. And then I found out what animation was. I'm like, oh my God. So then at that point on, and also I was raised, and like the time that I was growing up was like the perfect time period for animation. Lion King, Goofy movie, Toy Story was coming out. I was still very impressionable at that time. Cartoon Network just started doing original programming, so they had all their shows coming out, Cow and Chicken, Dexter's Lab, all that stuff. Yeah. Nickelodeon had all their shows. Since all the influx of animation was, and it was like the second golden age of animation, it felt like. Yeah. And I was surrounded, and then I wanted to study up on because I'd get books on animation, then I'd find out about the history, and then I loved the history of it, so I'd study the history, and then I would do this and that. And my dad, when I was really young and I first started getting into animation, he thought there was something wrong with me. Because what I would do is I would animate on one sheet of paper, which I still do. I'll animate and I'll draw over it, or I'll draw a picture next to it. My dad was like, what is he doing?
Oh, it's just like a sequence.
I would either draw a sequence or I draw it on top of each other in different colored pencil.
Did you ever take like Post-it notes?
I actually never really made flip books.
There used to be like they don't have it anymore because it's now just like Post-it notes because it has like the sticky stuff on it. But they had like notes that were just like this big stack, like notepads, and they were like square notepads, and I would just take tons of those and just animate through those and flip through.
I never really made flip books. I didn't really, because what I do is I'd animate and then I would never shoot them because I never had a way to shoot them.
Right.
Like
same here.
There was a point when I was when I was about 12 or 13, I'm like, I'm going to build my own multiplane camera. And I tried, and it was an awful experience. I tried. And then like years later, my dad figured out, he's trying to animate. That's what he's been trying to do this whole time. Shit, because you finally saw because
That boy ain't right.
There's a local when I was in New York, there was a local college, Hofstra University, and they have these Saturday classes for young people. And there was a guy named Al Baruch who was an animator. He worked at Disney, and he's not a very famous name, but he worked at least in terms of Disney because he was only there for about 5 years. But he worked on like Peter Pan and a bunch of Donald shorts and Lady and the Tramp. And he actually told a story where he did the voice of Jacques the dog for like 2 lines in the movie, and they're in the movie. You can hear them. Mm-hmm. And because I guess the guy who voiced it, Bill Thompson, was sick and he couldn't do it, and they ended up Disney lost a couple $1,000 because he had to re-record the dialogue again. But he was the voice for 2 lines or 3 lines of dialogue in the movie. You can hear it.
Yeah.
And he was my mentor in a way, and he taught me about drawing and animating and stuff, but I wasn't that good of an artist yet because there's like those Saturday classes, just people there's like a small handful of people who are really interested, and then the rest of them are like, well, they're playing too many video games and their parents drop them off and they're just sitting there with their iPods or their headphones in and they're playing whatever. But I worked my way up, and I would go there again and again and again. I'd even take classes over, so I can work with Al again. And we learned about even painting cells, which at that point was already dead as a doornail.
Yeah, because it's something you're interested in.
I was passionate about it. Right. It was really cool. So I would and then I became a teacher's assistant. And then I grew up, and then every once in a while I'd sub, and I would whatever. And it was really an interesting experience. And then I eventually in 2007, I graduated high school, and I went to SVA, School of Visual Arts. And I went there for 4 years, and I got into my portfolio. It was barely a portfolio. It's true because I never really made a portfolio.
Right.
Because now at that point, by 2007, most schools were like, "Can you pick up a pencil?" Yes. Can you pay the tuition? I think so. Cool. Come on in.
Yeah.
So, and the standards were, the standards now are even lower in most schools now. But then it was like, okay, now, and then I had some really great teachers, and I went through the 4-year program. I made a thesis film, and I tied winning an award at the end. I'm like, that's kind of cool. But then afterwards, and it was a great experience. I had great teachers in college, and I loved it. But then I graduated, and then a few months later, I worked at my first job, which was Titmouse in New York on Motor City.
Right.
And I'm going to be in a very vague way, I'm just going to say it wasn't the most pleasant experience. And part of it was my fault, part of it was their fault, but part of it was just it wasn't what I wanted to do, and it kind of broke me. Like there was a point where I was like, do I really want to be in this business? If this is what the business is going to be like? Yeah. And I didn't like it.
That's kind of what I felt like with this one. Before I went into Warner Brothers, I was in like this little Flash place where they were doing, I think it's like web shows. This is when there was the big .com boom, like Flash animation was like being everywhere.
2005.
Yeah, like what is it? Hitbox and or Icebox or whatever it is. And this was like a group that was looking for animators right out of college, and I was there, and it was like I felt like I was teaching these people how to animate because it was like, well, this is kind of not set up really well. Can you I know you want to rig these things. Can you rig them a little better? It's like, oh yeah, we'll do that, and you come back later. And then it's like I had to kind of quit because there wasn't really anything that was happening with it.
And it kind of breaks you in a way.
Yeah, it was like, oh, is this really what it is now? Yeah. And because there was like this promise, there usually is this promise where it's like, oh, you're going to be in a feature film, and we're going to talk about how feature films are made. And I honestly feel like that was a detriment to me because I didn't feel like I was growing up learning about TV animation, which is something that I feel I know so much about now, and I feel like it's sad that it's not taught more because
business itself, I think, it should have been taught more in school.
Oh yes,
the
exactly.
Side of it.
Yes, exactly.
But no one does teach it.
No,
the schools don't want to.
Yeah. But yeah, you felt like.
I felt like it. I mean, it was part of it was just me just not getting into the work, and part of it was just how the studio was run, and I have nothing really against the studio itself about it, but it led to being a really awful.
The experience.
The experience was really awful, and it ended really badly. And I worked freelance for a year, and that was kind of hit and miss because it sucked. I hate working freelance because you're working paycheck to paycheck, and and there's uncertainty.
Oh, I've been through it too,
and it's awful. And then there was a time where I was unemployed, And then Hurricane Sandy hit and just destroyed half my town.
Yeah.
And I was like, screw it, I'm just going to California. And when the stupidest thing I could have ever done was I just packed up my car and left. And I moved to California.
Oh.
And thankfully, one of my friends who I went to school with and his girlfriend took me in. And they were like, hey, you want to stay with us? And I'm like, yeah. And and that was cool. But right when I came in, and it's funny, this is now, I don't want to keep detouring, but the year before, I went to Animation Block Party, which someone I knew who worked at SVA on the floor. He was like the floor manager there. And Casey Saffron, who runs Animation Block Party. And I knew him, and I went to one of his Animation Block Party festivals, and I met a guy at the party, and there was one of those places, one of those things where it's the comedian goes up on stage, and you draw on a Cintiq, and it appears on a screen behind them, and it kind of complements the jokes by drawing behind them. And he asked me, do you want to do it? And I said, well, I'll try anything once. Opportunity, favors the bold. So I'm like, well, what the hell? I'll give it a shot. If I don't like it, then I don't have to do it again. But I did it, and it was fun, and it was great. And then the guy kept me in mind, and we friend each other on Facebook. And then a year later, out of the blue, I literally just put my bags down in California. And he's like, hey, I'm working on a pilot. It's about a depressed horse. He's a man horse. He's a horseman. Do you want a storyboard on it? And I said, I need the job, sure. And I didn't board. I mean, like I did some boarding, like you said. I did a little bit of it in college, but I didn't. I knew how to animate. I didn't know really about boarding.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew how to board, but I never had an experience boarding.
Yeah.
But he's like, you want to come in and board? I said, sure. And I ended up. It was the pilot for BoJack Horseman, and then that show got picked up, and then the ball kept rolling from there. But BoJack was the first job that I had that I felt like this is fun. This is a fun experience. I love working. The thing I love the most about working, because I worked on, my most recent thing I worked on was Wabbit, the new Bugs Bunny show that's coming out later this year. And the thing I love about my job, or any job that I've had, at least in the last couple of years, is that I like the learning experience. I like being able to work with really creative people and bounce ideas off each other. And
you also, every once in a while, you meet someone who it's like, you worked on that?
Right. Like, it's weird. Like, I work with people on Wabbit. I work with people who worked on movies I grew up with as a kid. People who worked on, like, Cats Don't Dance and Fern Gully and Lion King.
Yeah.
Even. And it's like, whoa.
And I meet people who worked on Garfield and Friends and U.S. Acres, and I'm just like, I love those cartoons. Yeah. And they're just like, oh, yeah.
It's strange now that we now are working with the people who helped shape our childhood. Which is sort of it's surreal, but it's enlightening because I feel like I'm learning from them.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what I love the most about the job, is that I felt like, even on Wabbit, like, I was drawing, but I'm like, am I good enough?
Yeah.
But then you learn as you go. And I'm like, I feel like in the year that I work.
And it certainly shows in your work, and also the people around you can see that you do great work. So,
yeah.
And they want to keep you around because you do great work.
And I get to meet more people, which means that, and it's not even me like, oh, goody, I have connections, blah, ha, ha. It's more like, there are people who are interested in the same things I am.
Yeah.
Which I think that's the thing I loved about, like, a lot of, I used to write for Cartoon Brew. Very shortly, because I'm not, but I stopped because I'm not a writer. I can't write. So
you do good writing.
Whatever. But I wrote an article saying what it felt like when I moved to California, and I said it was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
Personally, it was the best decision I ever made, because the animation scene when I left,
it's
was
different
dead.
for people, certain people. Sometimes.
After 9/11, animation in New York died. Like, everybody wanted to leave.
Right.
Nickelodeon, all their shows were slowly going under. MTV stopped doing shows.
Right.
All the small commercial houses stopped. And so it was, by the time I graduated SVA, animation scene was really dead. The only studios you can work for were Titmouse, that just opened, which is a satellite studio, and maybe Augenblick, which was doing, I think, Ugly Americans at the time, or they just finished doing Super Jail season 1.
I think so, yeah.
And we were like, that's really the only two major studios you can work for. Everywhere else you have to be in California.
Yeah.
And everyone even said, if you really want to work in animation, go to California. We didn't. I love New York, and I didn't want to leave. And I ended up.
Why would you kind of come to California?
What the fuck? And I realized, I said, the only way I'm going to be able to do what I love to do is to leave home, leave my family. I have no relatives out here in California.
No.
But I just decided.
Yeah, I grew up here. I'm like, this is my home. This is basically what I am aware of.
I still live in complete awe that I could look out my window and see mountains. The most interesting geographic highlight in New York is the horizon.
Right.
Like, there's nothing to see. So for me to see palm trees and all that stuff, and then being in California where the weather's nice all day. I mean, and I'm trying not to.
Sometimes.
Sometimes it's a little too hot.
Yes.
And
it's a little too good.
Yeah. But
we turn it down.
But I did an article saying, moving to California was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
And people like attacked me for it. They were like, "Oh, so what you're saying is
New York's not good enough for you, huh?"
Well, that, and then the other thing was like, now I guess what you're saying is the only way I'm ever going to have a job in animation is if I move to California. Is that what you're saying? I'm like, no, that was just my experience.
Yeah.
You can work anywhere. You can work in Georgia, work in Atlanta.
Oh God, yeah, I know. There's so much. There's easy access so much right now.
In Canada, and then now with the internet, you can work from God knows where. You can work from Beaver Balls, Arkansas, or wherever you're from, and you can.
I've been there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Really cool.
It smells weird though. No, I'm kidding. But
yeah, but no, yeah. I understand. It's like it's one of those things where it's like it's a good decision that you made. Right. So yeah, I mean that's your experience. And it's not everyone's experience, but it's yours experience.
And the great thing about
like for me, it's like it's been different. I've been in California my entire life, and I've never really thought about going to another state or at all because like I like it too much here.
Yeah.
And while it's like California's not the greatest place in the world. I'm never going to say that. But the experiences that I've had here, I mean, things will provide.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it takes patience, sometimes it takes effort, but I will never say that I worked hard to get to where I was. Things will happen, and I will never like just say I sit back and just let something happen to you. Just
you have to seek it.
You have to seek it, and from then it will be like the more you work at it and the more you show that you are determined to do something, the more people will see that you are determined.
Right.
And then they will rely more on your efforts.
Yeah. And I felt that way because like I felt like in New York, when I was in New York, I'm gonna die here. I'm gonna not resort to working in this field. Yeah. I'm gonna end up being a sign painter or doing something else, doing I don't know, pizza boxes or designing signs or like painting glass windows at Christmas time. Like I thought that was gonna be my job, and I'm like if I really want to do what I have to do, I have to take a chance. I have to move. Worst case, and I saved up a bunch of money and I moved, and I knew that worst case scenario I'd have to come back to home. But I accepted. I knew what my fate would be if I didn't try. Yeah. So I'm like, well,
that's the thing. You have to try, and you have to.
And what is it? It's I don't know nothing about hockey, but it's a Wayne Gretzky quote that says, "You miss every shot you don't take." It's always worth taking the shot. Whether it's like, what is the worst case scenario? You don't get the job, or it doesn't work out, and you have to move.
There's either a 50-50 chance or a no chance.
Right. So I'd rather take the 50-50 chance than not try. It's like So I made that chance, and it worked out. I mean, it took some time. I mean, it's not perfect. Yeah. But I'm so glad that I did it, and I'm happy now. Yeah. I mean, even right now, like I'm currently not working. I'm I mean, gigs come and gigs go, and now I'm going on to the next thing. But I'm not like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? I know that something will come, something will happen as long as I keep working at it.
And I've had many moments like that myself, where it's like I've been in between work and I've only had freelance to do, and even then, it's like I've had long periods where I didn't even have freelance.
Right.
So. But really, it's just like, patience. You will continue. Yeah. You have to be able to survive this element we call financial
stability. Financial, keeping yourself afloat. Yeah. Like but the thing is, I know that at least I live in a place that supports what I do. Yeah.
And you're surrounded by people who also support you.
Right.
As well.
Exactly.
So
I've met so many. Like I never thought. Because I mean, this is the kid that grew up with the VCR as my best friend. Yeah. Now, in the last 2 months alone, I have been more social. Yeah. I've been more outgoing than I've ever been in my entire life. I go to parties. I go to lunches with people. I meet with old coworkers. I now with Facebook we keep connected and we find out what's going on. Exactly. I had lunch with a friend at Disney 2 weeks ago, and that's cool. Yeah. And there's things I never thought I'd be able to do, like even like something like running into an artist I really admire. Yeah, we live in an area that welcomes that. We go. I mean, like
we even see Jay Leno down the street sometimes.
Well, don't even get me started about Jay Leno. That would be the one thing. It's like and it's funny. My folks, like every time I go back to New York every Christmas or every middle of the year when I have a break, and they say, have you ever thought about moving back? And I said, you know what? if I'm here for too long, I start to miss the place. But
Yeah.
honestly, no, I'm happy in California. I
Yeah.
would want to live here the rest of my life if I
Yeah.
could. I love it here.
Yeah.
And I love my job. I love the work I do. I love the people that I work with. I love being able to be surrounded in a at least in the Valley and in LA.
Yeah.
There is a culture. There is an appreciation for what we do. There's nobody like I've met there's been times where I have a funny story. I was on a plane flying to California. I was visiting, and I was visiting friends before I moved here. They said, "Well, why don't you come check out the place and maybe find an apartment or something?" And I didn't end up looking for an apartment. I just said, "Let me just enjoy my vacation in California."
Yeah.
So I went to California to stay at a friend's place, and I was on the plane, and I talked to a guy, and we were making slight conversation. I was sitting in the seat next to him on the plane.
Yeah.
And, we're waiting for the plane to take off. And he's like, yeah, it takes forever, right? Yeah, yeah. And then we start talking about, the weather and shit. And then it leads to conversation. And then he's like, I said, well, what do you do for a living? He's like, oh, I'm a real estate agent. I'm going to a real estate convention in LA. I said, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you do? He's like, well, I'm going out to scout out in California. He's like, oh, do you work in entertainment? I said, yeah, well, in a way, yeah, I do. He's like, oh, really? And he got really excited.
Yeah.
And, so what do you do? And he's like, what do you do? And I said, I want to work in animation, cartoons. Oh. And then the conversation died.
And you never talked to him ever again for the rest of the
trip. It was a very awkward 4 hours. And that was it. And I was like, well, goodbye. Enjoy your peanuts. And I'm going to enjoy looking out the window for the next 4 hours.
So lesson learned, don't become an animator.
But I mean, I'm so glad that I live in, and now that I live in a region that I can even go to a store and they're like, what do you do? Oh, I work in animation. Oh, like at Disney? Well, kind of. It's like, well, I love that stuff.
Yeah, that was one thing growing up. It was like that. Every time you said like, oh, I want to become an animator, and it says like, what? Are you going to go to Disney? And I just thought to myself, like, I'm probably not going to go to Disney, but all right.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being at a Q&A for there was a guy named Yuri Norstein who was a Russian animator.
Yeah.
He did Hedgehog in the Fog, which is a great film. Check it out on YouTube.
Yeah.
Years and years ago. And he had a Q&A in New York while I was in SVA, and a lot of students were there, but then a lot of Russian Americans were there because they grew up with Yuri Norstein's films in Russia. So there was a lot of Russian people there, and there was a cultural divide. And at the end of the show, I come out and there's a guy talking. He's like, "Oh, you work in you do what Yuri does? Yuri Norstein does?" I said, "Yeah, I work in cartoons." He's like, "Oh, you draw the Pixar? You draw the Pixar?" And I said, "Well, it's computers. It's like, but you draw the Pixar."
Yeah,
right?
It's like they don't quite grasp.
They don't understand. Well,
the differences.
anyone who doesn't work in animation doesn't understand. That's why people say like, "Oh, you can work for Disney someday."
Yeah,
because to them, Disney's.
It's like if I'm explaining storyboarding to someone who does not or has no interest in animation, it's like that's going to go over their heads. So.
Right. It's they ask you like things like, well, what do you do? It's like, well, I storyboard. What's that? Well, what we do is
yes, and then you go into this whole like spiel
what we
about
do is
it.
We do like almost like a comic book. We draw out the cartoon. What do you mean? It's like, well, we do the panels and we figure out the composition and the plot. The shot
cogs are like trying to work,
and they're like, what are you doing? It's like, well, we make. And I think the only time I ever got through to somebody is like, I pretty much make a PowerPoint presentation equivalent of a cartoon.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, really? That's a job?" I said, "Yeah." I had someone.
Yeah, I asked that question too.
Yeah, and the great thing is, being in storyboard, I love story. I'm interested in story. That's why I love watching. Like when we sit here and watch.
I love drawing. I love making the poses out and the expressions of the characters and acting out the scenes.
I love.
You're
analyzing.
you're basically the animator before the full animation. Yeah. With a lot of the stuff.
You're really thinking about what's going to happen in a scene.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about story is just thinking about what makes a character. Like we were talking, we talk about whatever movies we watch on when we record these shows, and it's interesting to me to watch a movie and be like, well, how would I have done that differently?
Yeah,
what would have made that work better? Yeah. And it helps by watching both good and bad movies learn.
Yes, exactly. Like really I seem to learn more from bad movies than I do with good movies because then it's like I know what not to do,
right?
And it's like. You also kind of think in your head, like, how would I make this? How would I fix this and make it better?
Yeah.
What is a way? Because you will meet up with that kind of situation a lot of the times.
Yeah.
You was like, okay, how can I meet this situation and how can I fix it and change it around to make it work?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I mean that's really great.
And the fun part about it is just like I said before, collaborating with other people, and
Yes.
bouncing ideas off each other.
Oh yeah, it's a team effort, and that was one thing that I remember in college. Like, I remember there was like team stuff that we had to do, and for me, it's like I always kind of wanted to helm the thing, but I never was the head of something. And while I didn't have a problem being in my position, I felt that other people did have a problem in their position because they would not do their part, or they did their part and it didn't really work to the rest of the group. And it's like you have to kind of converse with people to kind of like understand that this is all working to one vision.
Animation is a collaborative medium, and you can't really create it in a bubble.
No.
You need other people's input.
Exactly.
You need, I mean, even an independent animator.
That can be said with a lot of entertainment, you know.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of have to have the thought process of everyone, and not just one soul could really encompass the idea of the entire thing. I mean, one person can have the idea, and then a bunch of other people will come in to help make that better.
Yeah, like the great thing about, I mean, now I'm talking about Wabbit, which is going to be out in October, folks. Watch it on Boomerang. When
Please watch Wabbit.
Yeah. But
Warner Brothers, become a sponsor of Animated Anarchy.
Please do. But the thing I loved about it was that we'd all write the shows together.
Yes.
We would all, like, there would be times where I'm like, I'll be doing a board, one of my boards, and I'd get an opinion of somebody else. Yeah. And by actually talking to other people, I'm like, oh my God, I never would have thought of that idea.
Yeah,
but it's such a great idea.
Yeah, no,
and we could all bounce ideas off each other, and we would write these shows like clockwork.
Yeah.
And we knew what we were doing, and we were having fun doing it, which is, you know, we work we work in cartoons. Mm-hmm. It should be fun. Yeah. I don't understand why there has to be people who don't want to have fun. Because I've worked with people who don't want to have fun. It's like, what's so fun about making cartoons? It's like, what's not fun about making cartoons? We're making people happy. Yeah. I have the Kermit the Frog. My dream is the Kermit the Frog dream. Is I just want to do what I love and make people happy doing it. Yeah. And that's what because I think I want to do.
I think that's what you really should. I think that's the best thing that you can take out of this is that you're doing something that you love, and while it's not perfect, it's still something that you do it, and it's something that you are good at.
Yeah.
You know, and something that you're doing that not really a whole lot of people can say that they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when you find that thing that you really are passionate about and it becomes your job. I mean, there are things where it's like it's your job, but at the same time it's like I really love my job because it's something that I'm doing because it was this was what I was passionate about.
Yeah. And it comes full circle. Because there is a point where when you're a kid and you're sad or mad or unhappy for something. Or glad. Whatever. But if you're at a point where you're at a crucial point in your life where you're a kid and you're sad.
Yeah.
And sometimes, at least for me, to make me feel better, I'd watch a Disney cartoon or watch a Warner Brothers cartoon or watch something. And now that my life is sort of almost, in a way, come full circle, where now I'm hopefully providing the same kind of thing that I want to give to people what they gave to other people before they gave to me. Yeah. So now I feel like I'm and this is I don't want to keep going. I don't want to go on too long with this, but I guess my philosophy about animation is that I realize that we work in the morale boost business, the spirit building business.
Yes.
We spend, think about it, hundreds of people work on an animated film 4 years. They'll spend 4 years on a movie. Blood, sweat, tears, working long hours, late night, sometimes working on weekends, working through lunches, stuff like that. They work really hard to make a movie that'll it takes 4 years to make an hour and a half of a movie, and there's someone in that audience that, their mother or their grandmother just passed away, or they went through a horrible divorce, or my pet died, and just knowing that what we do, as much work as we put in, and it sounds like I'm belittling what we do, but it really is a distraction business. We work in the business of being able to do something that makes people forget about their problems or enlighten an opinion or make them feel better. Yeah. We do that
for bad or good. We give people an emotion.
We give people, because the thing is, I think that's really the best thing. The fact that because America doesn't export really anything anymore. corn, maybe. I don't know. But besides that, entertainment is what we give to people all over the world. We give entertainment to our own people.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing we could do. Is there's people who had a shitty day at work, and it's great to know that they can come home and put on Netflix or put on TV or put in a movie and just lose themselves for an hour and a half or 2 hours. Being able to be like, well, my life sucks, but for these 2 hours, let me just push this to the back of my brain and just focus on what's here. And it makes you, and like, there's nothing better than going to a movie and just feeling good when you leave. I don't understand why people would want to go to a movie to be sad. Like, I'm really happy. I'm going to bring it down a notch. I'm getting really depressed. I'm going to go watch Schindler's List.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, but I feel like what I do, and I don't mean to belittle what I do or what we do, but we do work in a business of we make people happy. It's our job. And in a way, depending on what kind of person you are, the act of giving is the best thing you can do. Because it makes me feel good to know that if I write a joke, or if I animate something, or if I create a drawing that people, or something that people either on the internet or on TV or in a movie will look at and have an emotional reaction to. I don't understand how people be
That's
like.
That's why I like whenever I draw something and I post it and I get that reaction, it's just like, it is a reaction. It's like, it means that something that I made really
touch someone.
Yeah. That's a great feeling.
Yeah. And even the little thing, even if someone just looks at a video and goes, "Huh, that was cool," click like.
Yes.
That is an emotional reaction.
That's an emotional reaction. Yeah.
It's getting to somebody in a way. It's like, you know, and I love that ability that we can do.
If this conversation hasn't shown you how passionate and how much love we have for what we do, then I hope that shows at least. So yeah. So
I think we should. I mean, we've gone on for a while about this. I mean, honestly, if we were left to our own devices, we'd be going on.
We'd probably go on forever.
It's already the sky has darkened.
Yes.
While we've talked about this.
Exactly.
And we could go on until the sun rises again.
But seriously, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. It really means a lot to us that you actually want to listen to two animation schlubs.
I was about to say schlubby guys. And you took the words right out of my mouth.
Just talk and discuss animation, and that makes us.
And coming back full circle, you said that you growing up you wanted to. It's like, oh, I don't want to be a fireman or a policeman. There was a time when I was a little kid, and I said I want to be a comedian.
Yeah.
Then I realized I wasn't funny, and I'm like, I can't do that. I can't. And then I became an animator. So I only laugh to myself. Yeah. And then
we are our own comedians.
Someone said animation, the job of an animator is we tell a joke and we wait 6 to 8 months to hear if someone laughs at it.
Yeah. Good.
But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, thank you so much for
sharing.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing.
Yeah, certainly.